You mentioned somewhere that the Shane Warne auction was like the turning point in cricket history.
One of the journalists said, how did you feel about being in the company of Shah Rukh Khan? I think if you get the infrastructure right in a business and you get those guys working on your side, then you're away.
At Phillips, Son and Neil in 1978, then you rose through the ranks and became the president of Christie's East in New York. How did those sporting experiences shape your approach to high-pressure environment of IPL auctions?
Folklore says that every franchise in the room bid on Dhoni.
February 20th, 2008, when the first ever auction took place right here in Mumbai, where I am based. What was the atmosphere like? How did it feel to be at the center of the first ever IPL auction?
So I had a slightly heated conversation with Vijay Mallya.
क्रिकेट क्रॉनिकल्स विद चंद्रेश पे आप सबका स्वागत है। आगे बढ़ने से पहले सबसे दरख्वास्त है, चैनल को लाइक कीजिए, शेयर कीजिए, सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और साथ ही साथ नोटिफिकेशन की घंटी बजाइए।
क्या हो गया भाई?
भैया आपसे सीखकर म्यूचुअल फंड्स में एसआईपी शुरू की थी, लेकिन कभी कभी अपडेट्स देखकर मेरा मन भटकने लगता है।
सुन, ये लिफ्ट जब ऊपर नीचे जाती है तो तू निकल जाता है।
नहीं भैया, यही तो सही मंजिल तक ले जाती है।
तो बस म्यूचुअल फंड्स का भी यही है, डटे रहेगा तो तू भी अपने सपनों के पास पहुंच सकता है।
हाँ बिल्कुल आपकी तरह।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Hello, everybody. We've very privileged to have Richard Madley, the hammer man, as they like to call him, who is also IPL's first ever auctioneer, joining us right here on Cricket Chronicles with Chandresh. Richard, thanks a lot for joining us here on Cricket Chronicles with Chandresh. Privileged to be speaking to you. I just want to touch upon your early years. You played cricket in Surrey League and also represented Wales in junior hockey. How did those sporting experiences shape your approach to high-pressure environment of IPL auctions?
Well, firstly, it's great to be joining you today. My love of cricket goes back to my childhood. My first ever game of cricket I watched on the television was India v England, 1967. And that's when I fell in love with the game. And I aspired to be a professional cricketer at that age. I was an average cricketer. I was a wicketkeeper batsman. Yeah, I'd like to think I was in the MS Dhoni mold, but it wasn't to be. I played good club cricket in the Surrey Cricket League. And I played a lot of wandering cricket for various numbers of teams throughout England and Wales. But I realised that I was never going to make it as a professional cricketer. I was actually a better hockey player. So I was a goalkeeper. So I was a wicket keeper in cricket and a goalkeeper in hockey. In hockey, I got into the Welsh schoolboys team. I played for Wales under 21 side. We won the home championships. I played in the European championships for Wales. And then I realized I better get a job. It's all very well playing cricket and hockey, but I think I better get serious about a profession. My father was an auctioneer. My father-in-law was an auctioneer, so it made sense that perhaps I should become an auctioneer, follow in the family footsteps. And, I think that sporting experiences in cricket and hockey helped me in the team environment of an auction, because there's a lot more to the auction than just seeing the man standing on stage and waving this little fellow here. Behind every auction, be it at Christie's, where I was for a number of years, and Phillips in New York and London before that. Within the IPL, you've got a whole team. When I was working there, from IMG, who were putting together the auctions themselves. They've gathered the players' contracts, they've got them signed, they've agreed the terms with them. Then you've got the people who are making sure that the technology works. People who are keeping score. So it is a whole team effort in conducting an auction, and the auctioneer himself just happens to be the face of the process itself. But there's a lot more team members playing than you might imagine.
Interesting. Was there a particular moment in your life as an athlete that inspired you to get into auctioneering, or was it just like you said, your father and your father-in-law being an auctioneer themselves that influenced you? Did your sports background influence your auctioneering style?
Well, it's a good question. I think that an auctioneer needs to lead from the front. He has to be very clear in his instructions. He has to communicate with an audience. So, an auctioneer is a performer. That's really what he's doing. I liken him in the music world to a conductor. I think there's a lot of similarities. But in cricket, I think he's closer to an umpire. And since I stopped playing club cricket, I qualified as an umpire, ECB level 2 umpire. So I umpire in club cricket now at every Saturday throughout the season, and actually I liken my umpiring skills more to my auctioneering skills than the players themselves. So an auctioneer needs to be firm, fair, and friendly. Yeah, and I think when I'm umpiring, I also like to think that those are the three attributes that I have. That that I make sure that there's fair play. I make sure that there's a good pace to the game. I don't allow too much time wasting. I don't tolerate too much chatter. But at the same time, if there's an amusing incident on the pitch, I can join in and smile and laugh along with the players. So perhaps an umpire more than a wicketkeeper are similar to the auctioneering skills.
You've been, correct me if I'm wrong, at Phillips, Son and Neil in 1978. And then you rose through the ranks and became the president of Christie's East in New York. What do you think were some of the pivotal moments in your auctioneering journey?
Well, I started at the very bottom, and I was very privileged to actually get a job. They're highly sought after, these jobs, working in the international auction rooms, where you have to start at the ground level. So I started unloading the lorries. I would, I'd get my jacket off, and I'd start and work with the guys on the shop floor. And the man who would come in often to see us and to help us was my chairman. My chairman was never too proud to take his jacket off and work with the guys on the shop floor. And when I rose through the ranks from the very bottom to be proudly appointed president of Christie's East in New York, I was 40 years of age. I'd been in the business for nearly 20 years, starting at the bottom, and the first people that I called in to address in my new business were the porters, the guys who were doing the manual work, the guys who I think are as important or more important than the business winners. You've got to have a good operations team. And I think a few people were quite surprised that I addressed them first. But I think if you get the infrastructure right in a business and you get those guys working on your side, then you're away. So I'd learned through the ranks. I decided that I'd like to be an auctioneer, again in my father's footsteps. But I had to train. I had to be taught. And therefore I became an auctioneer's clerk. So I sat beside the auctioneer through every auction, recording all the bids, recording the hammer price, recording the name or it was the name of the purchaser. So I got into the groove of seeing some of the great auctioneers performing in London when I was a young man, and then I was allowed to cut my teeth in a much smaller provincial auction room. And the first lot that I ever sold was a pair of folding step ladders, and I sold them for £3.50. Not a lot of money. And I sold them to a dealer, and he said, I'm going to keep that step ladder. He says, because one day you'll probably become a famous auctioneer, and I can say that I own the first item that Richard Madley ever sold at an auction. And I went back to see him only a few years ago, and I said, how are you? He's an old man now. He said, I'm very well. He said, come out the back of my warehouse. And I went to the back of his warehouse, and there he's got that very pair of step ladders that he bought from a young auctioneer called Richard Madley, probably 45 years ago.
Interesting. Richard, apart from this particular auction that you mentioned, is there a non-IPL auction that stands out in your memory?
Well, the combination of having a love of cricket and being a skilled auctioneer allowed me to develop auctions devoted to cricket memorabilia, paintings, works of art, sculptures in bronze, in porcelain, historic bats, scorecards, books, wisdom cricketers' almanacs that form the backbone of cricket memorabilia collections. And I was privileged to run that department for Phillips Auctioneers back in the mid-1990s. And I was invited one day to go to a relatively modest terraced house just outside Birmingham, where I met the widow of a recently deceased collector. He was a dental surgeon whose passion was gardening and collecting cricket memorabilia. His name was Hal Cohen, and Hal was the short for Harold Cohen. And I went into their relatively modest house on the outskirts of Birmingham, and the walls were full of cricketing prints and cricketing paintings. The cabinets were full of mounted cricket balls, signed bats. But this is cricket memorabilia from the 1920s, 1910s. Some of it went back to the 1880s. It was the finest collection of cricket memorabilia still in single hands. Many of the items were equal to those in the museums at Lord's and at the Oval, both of which I have valued since. And I was privileged to conduct the first ever single owner cricketing auction of the Hal Cohen collection. And it was the first time that I started to see the global appeal of cricket to collectors, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, collectors from West Indies, and then introduced to Indian collectors who were very interested in acquiring pieces of Indian cricket memorabilia. Because I'm fascinated by collectors because that I spend my life with them. And in the world of cricket, it is interesting that there aren't that many collectors of Indian cricket memorabilia. And I've handled some wonderful early pieces, and they don't really sell for very much money. It's a strange thing. I've yet to work out why it is that there aren't more people who are interested in the history of Indian cricket, which often goes, in my opinion, unnoticed in these auctions.
Interesting. Now switching to February 20th, 2008, when the first ever auction took place right here in Mumbai, where I am based, at the Oberoi Hilton. And what was the atmosphere like? How did it feel to be at the center of the first ever IPL auction?
Well, the first ever IPL auction back in 2008 was a little bit of an unknown quantity when I was first approached to advise on it. I only came into the IPL as an advisor to help them write the rules and regulations and the conditions of sale for the forthcoming sale that was going to be taking place in India in February. I'd never been to India. I'd always wanted to go to India, but my job was as a consultant to write the rules and regulations, which I'm proud to say I think they are still using today. They certainly were using them when I left in 2018. So having been invited to go in to advise on the rules and regulations, I was then asked if I would then conduct the auction. And of course, I was delighted to accept, but there was no precedent. Nobody had ever conducted an auction before of cricketers. And therefore, we were in a little bit of the land of the unknown. And when I arrived in Mumbai, first of all, I was overcome by how warm it was. I was leaving a British winter to arrive in Mumbai in February, and it was hot. I probably wasn't prepared. I hadn't brought my lightweight summer suits. The auction itself, I knew was going to be interesting because of the number of press reporters, cameramen waiting at the Wankhede Stadium as I walked in the day before the auction to address the franchise owners. And many of these franchise owners, I had no idea who they were. In fact, the following day on the Kolkata franchise table, there was a gentleman there who was very friendly towards me. He wasn't actually doing the bidding. And after the auction, I went into an interview or several interviews. And one of the journalists said, how did you feel about being in the company of Shah Rukh Khan? And I said, Shah Rukh Khan. I said, tell me, who is Shah Rukh Khan? And they were amazed. And of course, Shah Rukh Khan had been sitting on the Kolkata franchise. How was I to know him? I was an auctioneer who'd come over from England to conduct the auction. I was unaware of the fame of the greatest Bollywood actor. But I didn't let that faze me. The important thing is, although I was aware that cricket was changing that day, I do think that cricket was never the same again. That I was fortunate to be there, holding the gavel, conducting proceedings. But you can never stop and reflect on what's happening when you're live on stage. You've got to move on to the next player, and so once you've sold Glenn McGrath, then the next player is Shane Warne. And when you've sold Shane Warne, you're going to move on to Kumar Sangakkara. Don't stop and think, oh my goodness, that was a lot of money, wasn't it? Or, oh, I wonder who he's going to play for. Because if you lose your concentration when you're up there, then you can lose the audience. But I was conscious that things were changing very rapidly, and afterwards, people were texting me to say that they'd been in the gym in London, or they'd been in a restaurant in Adelaide, or they'd been in the beach bar in the Caribbean, and they'd seen the auction and realised that was the day that cricket changed forever.
You mentioned somewhere that the Shane Warne auction was like the turning point in cricket history. Why do you say so? Why was it so significant?
Well, it was the brainchild of Lalit Modi, who must take the praise for coming up with this concept of revolutionising Indian cricket, at the same time seeing the potential for it to revolutionise world cricket, and to have signed up 84 of the world's top cricketers to come in and play in a 6-week window in India a few months later, was game day. No one had done it before. It was just there was a feeling in that room. There was an air of expectancy, and yet a sense of the unknown when the auction began. But in my mind, I could sense something great was taking place. And when the hammer came down, on Shane Warne, that's when I just said to myself, cricket will never be the same again. And it hasn't been. I mean, but nobody knew how big the IPL was going to become. And you look back now, and we were actually, the franchises didn't even have team names. They were holding up little plastic polystyrene circular table tennis bats with Kolkata written on them, or Mumbai. They didn't have names. They didn't have any team colours. There was no branding on the tables. The attendees wore a jacket and tie or a smart dress. My goodness me! By the time I came back the following year for the second IPL auction, things had really picked up. And also the bidders had become more sophisticated, because there was a lot of prices paid in that first ever auction, which was based on reputation as a test player. And some big names made some big money. They never actually delivered in the IPL, but that was all part of the excitement. So it was a truly historic day. I was fortunate to be there. I think if I'd realised what a big deal it was, I might have got nervous. As it was, I just carried on and hopefully conducted it in my normal style.
यार मार्केट कैसा ऊपर नीचे होता है.
याद रख, करियर, इन्वेस्टमेंट और लाइफ में ऊपर नीचे होता रहता है यार.
वो तो है.
बस भाई डटे रहे, तभी तो अपने सपने पूरे कर सकता है.
सही है.
लाइफ और म्यूचुअल फंड्स में लॉन्ग टर्म सोचना
सही है.
सही है. हाँ.
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है. योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें.
But you were witness to the bidding war for MS Dhoni, who finally went to Chennai Super Kings, which was at a phenomenal $1.5 million at the time. What do you recall about that intense bidding session for Dhoni?
Well, when I looked at the set numbers and the mixture of the players who are allocated in those sets, and obviously MS Dhoni was a marquee player, and the way that the players come out of the bag, the velvet bag, does influence the bidding in the room. When MS Dhoni name came out, there was a murmur around the room. You could tell that there were franchise owners who were waiting particularly for this player. Now, I knew him as a cricketer. I knew of him and his skills. I probably didn't realise what a big figure he is, what a big name he was in India, or was to become. Folklore says that every franchise in the room bid on Dhoni during the bidding process. There's two things about that. First of all, there is no record of that auction of me selling it, which is quite extraordinary. In 2008, mobile phones were banned from the auction room. So there were no mobile phones in the room. Sony controlled all the broadcasting rights. But if I'd been asked once, I'd been asked 1,000 times of do I have access to the footage of the part of the auction when Dhoni came under the hammer, and I don't. I've never seen it, but I would have to probably refute the fact that every franchise was bidding for him. The Rajasthan Royals, who were then called Jaipur, had already bought Shane Warne. They've got their captain. There were a number of. I remember RCB were in the bidding for him. I think Mumbai Indians were in as well. But there was a determination on the Chennai table that they were going to buy him, and as an auctioneer, you can pick up that vibe. You can tell when a bidder is determined. That doesn't mean to say that they get excited and start waving their paddles at you, but Chennai came to that auction. Mr. Srinivasan was on that table, and he wasn't going home without MS Dhoni in his team. So they were getting, and they of course were the successful bidders, and it probably in my 50-year career as an auctioneer now, it is the highlight of my career, because as I've said before and on many times, that was the day that cricket changed forever, and I was the lucky person to be there on that podium on that day with this very gavel in my hand, the famous IPL Auctioneer's gavel, on which I could drop it and always say, sold.
And over the decade that you spent in the IPL, were there players whose auction prices far exceeded expectations, leading to surprising bidding wars?
Yeah, there was. I suppose the following year, for the first time, English players were invited to the auction. So, we had Kevin Peterson coming up, and of course Freddie Flintoff, a short-lived spell with CSK. They all had. They now had names, you see. So that was the franchises had names. So there was a battle, but there in that auction, there was the Bangladeshi player. You're going to help me with the name now.
Mashraf Mortaza.
Yeah, he came in. He came into the auction as an unknown with a base price. We were selling then in dollars, US dollars, and I'm guessing his base price was whatever, 50,000 US dollars, and the bidding started for him, and that was the first time that there was a huge rise in the incremental value of the player from a very low base price to a very high hammer price. It went on and on and on, and that's when I liken auctioneering then to a little bit like diving into a swimming pool and not knowing how deep the water is. Obviously, I hope it's very because you'll keep swimming. You're trying to reach that, and you're not quite sure what the depth of the pool is. And I wasn't sure then where the bidding was going to end. I mean, how far could it go? So that was probably the first time that we ever saw a player who went from multiple of his base price. Most people try and remind me of the time that I missed the bid for Yuvraj Singh. The auction had moved now to Bangalore. We held many of the auctions in Bangalore of the 11 auctions that I took. So obviously the RCB fans weren't very pleased when my hammer went down for Yuvraj Singh, and simultaneously the hand went up from the Kings 11 Punjab. But of course, as I remind people, I hadn't actually said the magic word of sold. So I had a slightly heated conversation with Vijay Mallya, the owner of the RCB team at the time, who thought he would tell me the laws and regulations of auctions. And I had to explain to him that on that day, I am the sole arbiter in any disputes. There is only one umpire in the IPL auctions. There's no second umpire. I can't go upstairs and review it. So he had to accept that my decision, not very happily. In fact, I was reported to the BCCI that evening, and there was an emergency meeting held that morning to decide, the outcome of my decision. And I'm pleased to say, that the BCCI stood right behind my decision. In those instances, an auctioneer earns his crust. And it's no different from going back to umpiring. You do what you think is right at the time. I'm a human being. Ironically, it happened again 2 years later, this time with KKR. It was Yuvraj Singh. I can't believe it. When I come to the end of the bidding, I would say, now, are you all done? And I will scan the room. And in cricket terms, there are teams sat at deep square leg on the boundary, and there are other teams sat at backward point on the boundary. And so you've got to look through 180 degrees. You've got to be like a fly. And again, my hammer came down, and then from backward point on the boundary, I was bidding, said KKR. Now, I had to be straight away, I had to be very clear. And I said, I did not see your bid. Now, that way, I'm saying I'm human. But if you are telling me that as my hammer came down, your paddle went up, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. In that case, I will reopen the bidding. Again, I wasn't very popular with the underbidder, but I did what I felt was right at the time. And actually, UV has been very kind. He's coming over to England next month, where the Indian cricket team here, and he is holding a gala fundraiser in London for his charity. And it will be attended by the good and the great from England and beyond, as well as the entire Indian cricket team are going to attend the function. And he has asked that I am his auctioneer that evening, and I'll be conducting a charity auction at the Grosvenor House Hotel on July the 7th, I think it is, to raise money for his cancer charity. So it's rather nice to be invited back into the fold. People haven't forgot me. R. Ashwin is moving to London, I hear. He's going to live here. He's going to live in London. And he's invited me out to have dinner with him, because I said to him that over the years I've made more cricketers millionaires than Kerry Packer, and I've never had anybody say to me, come and have dinner with me. So R. Ashwin has said, right, you're coming to have dinner with me, Mr. Hammerman. And of course, I never had him under my hammer because he never appeared in the auction. But Virat Kohli, I'm told, is moving to London as well. There's an exodus of Indian Test cricketers moving to London to live. I would hopefully look forward to meeting with him at some stage in a social environment if the opportunity arises. I still do fundraising auctions. My time as the IPL auctioneer finished abruptly in 2018. But happily, the SA20 picked me up, and so I'm off to Johannesburg on September the 7th to conduct the next SA20 player auction. So I'm still keeping my hand in, despite the grey hair, receding hairline. I'm still able to do it, I think, and look back very happily on my time as the original IPL auctioneer.
I just want to know, apart from the players, what about the owners? You had some charismatic owners as well. Did you interact with any of them, like Shah Rukh Khan, Preeti Zinta? You mentioned Vijay Mallya. Were the owners also that left conversations with the owners which left an impression on you?
Well, I interacted with all of them, but I was probably at a distance of between 10 and 20 meters. I'm detached from all of them from the physical distance. There's no doubt about it. As the auctioneer, you develop a relationship with each of those bidders throughout the auction process, because they've all come there to buy players. They've all got in the mega auctions, they've all got the same purse, and therefore you do develop a little bit of a relationship. To be fair, you probably focus most on the franchise holder who is holding the bidding paddle, because it's the bidding paddle that you're watching for. So during the auction itself, I'm going to be firm, I'm going to be fair, I'm going to be friendly. I like to introduce a little bit of humor. I mean, if you look at those mega auctions that I conducted, and until recently, I was the only auctioneer ever to have conducted 2 mega auctions. I do tease Hugh Edmeades about that. My friend Hugh Edmeades, I do tease him that it all got a bit too much for him, and that the Hammer Man had more stamina, but he takes it very well. So I don't want to be derogatory in any way. But the energy that you have to give over a long period of time on stage requires a sense of humor, knowing when to pick up the pace, knowing when to slow down the pace, knowing when you don't actually have to say anything, because silence can be a very, very good asset to an auctioneer, especially when the bidding is getting higher and higher. So a little bit of a pause. When I train my auctioneers now, I say, don't be afraid of that. You haven't got to keep calling out the same number. There's a little bit more drama, a bit more tension if there is some silence. So yes, of course, over the years, I've met all those franchise holders. I had my differences with Vijay Mallya, which were made clear, but afterwards we shook each other's hands, and there was no problem at all. Preeti Zinta has always made it lively when she held the bidding paddle for the Punjab franchise. There was a lot of late bidding that went on there, but that's all part and parcel. That's what makes it interesting. I tell Manoj Badali, he's the coolest bidder in the room. Never ever shows any. I wouldn't want to play poker with Manoj. He gives nothing away. So they all had their different styles. Chennai ever consistent, probably just like they have been. Well, I bet until this season. Each one had their individual styles, and I'd like to think that I got on well with all of them. But at the same time, no favourites. If I've been asked it once, I've been asked it 1,000 times. Who is my favourite team? And I said, I haven't got a favourite team. I love cricket. Okay, who is your favourite Indian cricketer? That's another question I'm asked. And I said, do you really want to know who my favourite Indian cricketer is? And people are hanging on every word. My favourite Indian cricketer is Farooq Engineer.
Oh.
And I normally get a blank look from 90% of the young journalists And I said, remember, the first cricket match I ever watched was India v England in 1967. And Farooq Engineer was keeping wicket. Farooq then joined Lancashire. He's a legend in England cricket. He never went back to India. He's got his own place at Old Trafford. So he was my favourite Indian cricketer, and that therefore that eliminates any favouritism whatsoever.
One final question to you. Looking back, how do you feel about your role in shaping the whole IPL auction process? Do you think about legacy that you may have left in the world of cricket auctions?
I think that nobody realised how important the auction would be within the whole of the IPL setup. It not only provided the opportunity for team owners to acquire selected players, it was a massive marketing opportunity to announce the tournament that was normally to be played 2 months later. In fact, there was a time, when people said to me, the auction itself is almost more exciting than the tournament. That they looked forward to the auction. They would actually take time off from work. Some people would take a day's holiday. One man stopped me in the street with his wife, and he said to me, I have watched every IPL auction, and and I've been the auctioneer every time. He said, it is simply the greatest day of the year. Forget wedding anniversaries, forget birthdays. He said, it is just a great day. And people talk about the auction far more than they talk about the games. There are so many games played. By the time one game is finished, you've forgotten what happened the day before. But the auction has longevity, and people are still talking about the highlights of the auction, from nearly 18 years ago. So I do think that the whole of the process of auction has been enhanced by bringing it into the Indian Premier League in 2008, and it is, as I say, it is now nearly, in some circles, bigger than the tournament itself.
Okay, Richard, I will now request you in your own inimitable style to declare this interview closed.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you all done now? It's been an absolute pleasure being here with you today, and so we're now going to close the auction. And if you're all done now, I'm going to look left, I'll look right. My hammer is raised. Sold.
Thanks a lot, Richard, for your valuable time. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Hope to speak to you soon. Stay well, and keep hammering the gavel regularly.
I'll do that. Thank you. A great pleasure to be with you.